Hey everybody, Shay here. I just wanted to share a little bit of a story that has come up while I've been unpacking a bunch of my books that I had put into storage about a year ago because I thought I was going to move. I am not going to move anymore. The house is off the market and I am committing to sticking around in this location for the next, 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. I'm not sure. But in any case, I left most of my furniture on the side of the road a year ago, so that's gone. I only got the minimal stuff left. But man, I wanted my books back, and all my books were in storage. I'm talking thousands of books between any kind of, like, whether they're novels or magazines, gaming books, comics, graphic novels, you name it. I was really missing it. And it was almost a year to this day when I packed everything up and got it out of here so I could quickly jump ship if I had to. I just wanted to disrupt my life a little bit more and see if I had some just sets. I had no plan B. I just wanted to kind of figure things out based on whatever happened next. In any case, the storage facility that I have all my stuff at is nearby this thrift shop place that I used to go to 30 years ago, monthly. I was probably 19 at the time. So I had just left the city to go to university. And then I was kind of out of the town for, decade and a half, moving around, going to Europe, coming back. And then now I'm living in a place that's far enough removed from there that it's not easy to just drop through. But I have to pass this place to get to the storage place. God, I'm saying place a lot. In any case, and I'm saying any case a lot. God, it's been a long time since I've been on the camera. That's the problem. I was going to say in any case again. The point is, I was desperate to find a specific series of books because I dropped into this thrift place. Every time I say place now, it's like a red flag. And I remember being two standard shelves wide of books 30 years ago, because it was mostly just thrift clothes, and there was a little section for records, maybe one shelf wide, like a container bin wide. It was very small. I mean, the place was big, but not for books, records, paraphernalia, I suppose. Wow, I'm derailing. I was going to tell a very quick story. This was probably going to be a 5-minute video, and I've derailed. I'm literally editing the video right now, and I realized that I derailed myself so bad that I forgot to give you the point of saying that there were only about 1 or 2 shelves wide of books available at this thrift shop. When I went back 6 weeks ago, it was basically 4 rows wide. And we're talking Walmart length rows and back to back. We're talking bang, 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 bang. And the endpoints and the wall on the other side. It was almost an entire corner of this entire thrift area. It was completely saturated with books. So I have to go back is what I'm saying. I forgot that point of the story. I'm going to send you back there. Now back to the video. Go back to the video. I'm sorry. What do you want from me? And so I would peruse these shelves because back in my teenage years, I was really into gaming books, novels set in gaming settings, if that makes sense. But then there was a name that I kept seeing over and over and over again. And at one point, I'm like, look, I'm just going to start buying these books because there seems to be a lot of them. And it was by this author called Piers Anthony. Okay, so, and this is what happened as soon as I started reading it again. There's that the book is it's coming apart. I have to rebind it. It's literally hanging on by this corner right here. But I had never read them. Spell for Chameleon is the first one in the Xanth novel series, and I had just gone back there, of course, like 6 weeks ago, and I saw at least 10 to 14 more books, and I was like, I don't even remember which ones I had, because I might have bought these 30 years ago, but I had never read them, because I just got this compulsive draw that I would go to this thrift place to just see if they had more Xanth series books. So I got this one. I'll pull the other ones out just so you see where I'm at. And so I needed to know which ones I had so that when I go back there, I have this list on my phone that I could just quickly scan and then pick up the ones that I don't have. Again, for compulsive reasons. But I also want to read them. But for compulsive reasons. We've got the second book here, A Source of Magic. And I believe, all of these take place in the same place. I do remember starting this one, but it would have been 30 years ago. And I remember maybe a couple, 4, 5, 6 chapters. I certainly didn't finish it. In any case, second book, we got the third book, Castle Ragna. Is that what it's called? Rugna. Okay, now again, I know nothing about this. If you know anything about Piers Anthony or the series or why it's so prolific, I know there's a lot of books now in the series, but why it's so prolific to find these in thrift shops. Does anyone know the reason behind that? As a Castle Ragna, we got the Centaur Isle. I know this is a place that's in the first book, The Spell for Chameleon, but I'm not sure if they go there. I didn't finish it, but the binding on this one is it's perfect, man. Okay, it's not perfect. There's maybe some wrinkles in here, okay? But it's still solid, like it's not warped. It's crazy. The pages are yellowed, sure, but this is an old book, man. These things are like look, I think it's like the late 70s, early 80s. These run through all into the 90s. Like this is an 82, 81, 82. It's crazy. And we've got the fifth book here, Ogre. I mean, these are even less yellowed. They're yellowed, but they're not, you know what I mean, like that crazy age, like they've been in the sun or moisture or whatever. No. And the binding is still relatively stiff, even though it's got some cracks in it. We got Nightmare. Pretty solid condition. I'm kind of worried about flipping the cover over and seeing it split, but no, it's not. It's holding together. So there you go. Nightmare. We got Dragon on a Pedestal. Got some glare in there. This one's a little bit more worn. See, like this is what I expect to see from older books, right? There's like yellow. Like I'm not sure if there's like age or if like this is what they dyed the page edges, because it looks like it's a different tint than the pages on the inside, right? The pages look that tan color. But in any case, this one's got wear and tear. It's got some cracks. And again, that doesn't matter to me because, again, this was a compulsive thing I was on back in those days. Almost perfect. Almost, again, barely. I mean, I don't know if the glare there, there's like no cracks, man. There's like, okay, there's a minor crack, but I'm saying it's pretty stiff. Look at the pages. It's almost completely white. Now, maybe I've just taken really good care of them, but you have to keep in mind, these books would have been early 80s. They would have been left at the thrift shop. This is a 1990, okay, or 85 to 90 printed. 13th printing, 1990. First edition was 1985. Again, it got a crease on the cover here, but it's barely cracked. So someone's read this once, and it got dropped. But did I say that? Cruel lie, like little wordplay maybe going on there. We got Golem in the Gears. This one always threw me off because it was a frog on the cover, but I'm not sure where the Golem comes into play here. But there you go. Not sure. I know nothing about the Xanth series. Once again, a bit of wear and tear just from like dings from like banging on things on surfaces and stuff like that, but no real creases. It's crazy, man. This is crazy. This might be the worst one of the bunch. This one's definitely been read a couple times. There's like, this is what I expect to see. This is the latest of the books. Strangely enough, I went from 1 to 9, and I don't think I planned for that. I just luckily got, okay, fair enough. Like I would have bought these up into like in the mid to late 90s is when I was chasing these down. So some of these might have only been 10 to 14 years old, you know, but this one's definitely got some use on it. But the pages are relatively fine. Yeah, definitely some extra cracks, but you open it up and it still feels like a solid unread book. It's crazy. And this, I have a feeling I'm still going to be able to find quite a few of these. And there's thrift shop books, so they're relatively inexpensive. Is anyone else out there who has like weird compulsive behaviors where you'll pick up books just because they're part of a series or something like that, or like you keep seeing it and you're like, man, I'm just going to take it. Like, I know there are a lot of Dean Koontz. Is he like a mystery crime? I've never read, but I know we're talking maybe 100 books of like, if he's a crime guy, it's just, these are everywhere. I'm like, how old is this man? Because this thing for decades and decades. How many novels was he releasing a year? Damn, man. I think it's Dean Koontz. I'm pretty sure that's the name. In any case, there's like stuff like that where I see, and I'm like, if I see enough of a book, like, is anyone else like this out there, right? Where you see enough of them where you're like, it's not a complete set, but there's like 5, and maybe the last number is like a 14. You're like, oh, there's 5 of at least 14, and I'm kind of like almost halfway there. So like, and then does anyone else just dive into silly things like that, and you don't even know anything about the book, but you're like, they're cheap. Where I'm at a thrift shop, or I'm at like a garage sale, or you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, man, I don't know. I got weird decades. I've been to some of this strangeness for decades, and I'd like to maybe showcase some of that strangeness just for people out there to know that you're not alone if you're like this as well. That's it. Already started reading A Spell for a Chameleon, which I ended up talking about on the previous video I uploaded, tied to the story behind the thrift shop hauls that I did like 30 years ago, and I'm going to be hunting down more of these. Now, I said that in that video before I had cracked into this. I thought I had already, like 30 years ago, I read like maybe 3 or 4 chapters or whatever I said. That is not the case. I very likely read the first chapter, and I didn't go past that. From chapter 2 onward, and I don't want to belabor this point because it's a bit of a rabbit hole, and it sexualizes every woman that the main character Bink runs into, to the point where it gets hard to ignore. And it was kind of amusing if you put it into context of like, it's kind of like a hee moments, right? And then you get to chapter 3 or 4, I forget when it was, I think it's 3, and things get uncomfortable, like pretty fast. There's definitely one specific line in here that sexualizes the body of a 14-year-old, and the main character is quarter century old, 25, and that's where I was like, okay, wait, what? I mean, I actually had to look up the age of consent in 1977 when this book was written. That's how uncomfortable it made me for that chapter, because then I was like, wait, is this for young readers or not? Right? Because like part of me is like, it's got mature themes in it, but it's written as if it's for 10-year-olds. It puts it in a really strange place where I feel like if you were very young when you read this, maybe some of that stuff was like tee-hee-hee stuff, like as an adolescent boy especially. But go back and read it as an adult. I highly like it. Would I recommend this for people who have modern sensibilities and they kind of triggered by things like that? I mean, no, no, I actually wouldn't recommend this. If you can separate that and kind of read, like I'm a fan of understanding the history of literary development through the centuries, university courses and stuff like that. So I understand where that context makes sense. This one made me question things, but I read things like best novel of the year, British Fantasy Society, and it makes me wonder, like, if these things are getting awards, and they've lasted for decades, you know what I mean? But it just makes me question awards at this point. Some of the phrasing in here and the over-sexualization of every female in almost every chapter that Bink runs into, it got so overwhelming to a point where I was like, I'm not sure how this won an award, but it's obviously like of its time. It doesn't really feel like that fits for this. I'm not sure. Look, I don't want to go. This is a TBR. I don't want to derail here. This really should have been a review video, and I was going to do one, but then I was like, I think it's going like I just didn't know how to approach it. That's all. And I did finish this. Like I started reading this immediately after uploading that thrift video, and this morning, and I finished it in less than 24 hours. So I was like, you know what? I can probably do another one. So I'm gonna put book 2 on the list here. As you can see, I've already done chapter 1. I'm going to be reading this one, which is a direct continuation to a Spell for Chameleon. Kind of like I'm in the groove right now, and I know the characters, right? So it's easier for me to kind of get right into it and run on through. We'll see if maybe the writing has toned down, and I mean by toned down, I mean like by 95%. Some of the misogynistic kind of language that it uses in the prose. I mean, it's overwhelming. Anyways, not to belabor, I did it again. I'm going to jump into the third book as well, Castle Rugna, because this plays a part in the first book. It's a chapter, and we learn about Castle Rugna, and I feel like there's some cool development that could happen here that I'm kind of curious to learn more about. First book might have thrown me off, but at the same time, like the world that this takes place in, the land of Xanth and Mundania, and it's almost like it's so simple that it can be clever. And if you're not a fan of puns, then you're probably really not gonna like it, because it's like dad joke humor all the way through with some of the wordplay, and it was done a few times in A Spell for Chameleon, but I can see it kind of pushing on that and making more of that. But yeah, that's the way I would put it, like dad jokes sometimes inside the prose, but like not as humor, but grounded, but like they do it anyways. It's part of the lore itself is this kind of silly way of using language in the narrative and stuff like that. Again, this could be a whole video where I break this down. Maybe if I read more of these, I'll get some more context. The point is, I'm going to do book 3, and then I'm going to also jump into Centaur Isle. I know that centaurs play a big part in the lore of the land, and also you learn which could make you uncomfortable if you apply modern sensibilities to what I'm about to say. But part of the lore of this world, the foundation of the lore of this world, is that all the breeds that are like half humans, use your imagination. It's evolutionary. It's not so much purely magical, like centaurs breeding centaurs. Use your imagination of what I mean by that. But any kind of hybrid creatures actually happen because of evolution, unnatural unions, if you will. Let's just listen. It's mythology. I mean, the Greek myths have it, and no one really brings this up and talks about it in the Greek myths. And I think it's just like in a disturbing way. It's not like the character like accepted that was the history of the world, even in the book 1, right? But in a disturbing way, you kind of like it grounds even that idea, and that becomes intriguing to me. Because it doesn't pull the punches on it. It's just like, that's the lore. That's how it happened. And Xanth is so magical that happened in Xanth allowed for things like centaurs and minotaurs and sphinxes and griffins. That'd be like an eagle banging a lion. You get what I'm saying, okay? That's the point. So that is I'm going to go for 4 books in the world of Xanth, but that's not it. That's not the aggressive part, because I did finish the first book in less than 24 hours. It is a long weekend here. I'll probably finish the second book by tomorrow, but then the work week starts, and so things are going to slow down. I had never read Piers Anthony. I had never read the Xanth series. Now, I didn't find many more of the Xanth series novels, but I'll get into why I probably won't get, I won't be picking any more up. I'll give you a summary of the 4 that I read in September, starting with A Spell for Chameleon. Did I think that the world building was interesting? Yes. Did I think that some of the wordplay kind of stuff was fun? Yes. Was it misogynistic and sexist? Absolutely. I think I've described it to folks as basically you being aware of the train wreck, but you just stay on for the ride. And that's pretty much what I committed to, because I have at least 1 to 9 I would like to eventually get through, but I might not pass that. I'm not sure. Anyways, let me stay on the track. Let me stay on the rails. I've read reviews on Goodreads, and there are a lot of 5-star reviews of people who have very fond memories of reading this while they were a child in the 80s, maybe even early 90s, but that they hadn't returned to the Xanth series as an adult reading the books. And I think that's really where you're gonna get that jarring kind of shakeup in the language. This was written in the late 70s, so it's not like it's of the era. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that sort of can get more easily excused possibly if you're kind of into literature and you can like separate yourself from the times and the work, so that you can enjoy the work for what it is in the modern times, regardless of the past times. You get what I'm saying? Anyways, but there's just enough kind of odd ways of describing the female characters, especially the underage ones. It starts to repeat enough where it actually does get a little bit uncomfortable, because you're like, if it was in the point of view of the character, you're like, I mean, it's probable, like that's what the character's thinking, so that's what we're reading. We're reading the character's, description of certain things. But then you're like, yeah, but it's like every character sort of describes females that way, and they're underage, and this gets to the point where it starts to detach me from the reading experience, because I'm thinking about the author, if you catch my drift. And so 3 out of 5 stars. It's not like it's not a terrible book. It's an okay book. I enjoyed it. It was actually fun. Fun enough that I read the second book, A Source of Magic, and I actually thought this was a lot of fun. Like they're just fun, and I'm like, maybe he'll tone down on some of the way that he's handling the female characters. Again, if it happens here and there and it's a product of its time, man, listen, I can excuse quite a bit when it comes to books. Like, I really can. But again, it becomes jarring because it's persistent. It's so often that it's really hard to stay in the story. Now, to deviate off of that topic, there's also something else he starts to do more and more of, which I thought was amusing in the first book. I still thought it was actually pretty fun in this one. It's the wordplay. Like, the world of Xanth is pretty much like, if you could think of any sort of word finagling, things that are called by something, but the double meaning of the word could make it be something else. I'm trying to think of they're all over the place, and I can't think of any damn example. This one's not in the book, but in an adventure, it might say that the door is ajar, because the door's open, the door's ajar, right? But in the world of Xanth, if you read something that says the door is ajar, it will very literally be ajar. And then the prose kind of evolves from there, okay? And so that's kind of the example I'm giving, where the wordplay is kind of amusing. It's like dad joke prose. It's how I would explain it. I think the characters are also a lot of fun. And the idea behind this story was actually pretty epic. The source of magic very literally does mean like the source of magic that behind all of Xanth. I mean, I won't spoil the details of it. They get to the source of magic. They definitely get there. Now, you do see a griffin here. That's actually a character called Crombie. It's kind of like an incel warrior. that gets transformed into a griffin to go on the adventure with Bink, and that's his centaur friend Chester. And they're all fun characters. They have this encounter with this dragon. This is actually early on. The idea of this is very good. I did rate it a 2 out of 5 stars because of the stuff I just talked about earlier. The female descriptions and the oddness of the language that can't separate me thinking of the writer writing the prose when describing underage females. It did get creepy. It did. I'll admit it. This was the train wreck. The first one was sort of like, you're probably on a train wreck, but you're like, but maybe it's just an oopsie doopsie from the first book. No. It's pretty committed to here. There's characters that get introduced here. There's like a rock nymph that, man, look, I'm not going to get into it. You're going to have to look into these yourself. My point is that this is like, it got too overwhelming that it actually removed me from the epicness of the story, because it was so prolific that I really had a hard time keeping my head inside the prose. And so 2 out of 5 stars with this one, because then I realized I did want to go back to the world of Xanth, despite the misogynistic, sexist train wreck that I was on. I couldn't DNF the series. I had to go back. I had to see if that might have minimized a little bit. And now I will have to say, it actually did. Now, did it still happen in this book? Yes. yes. The train wreck was still in play, but I could roll with it. Now, in this one, one, strangely enough, Bink is the first character of the first 2 books. Okay, he has a son with Chameleon, which is the spell for chameleon is actually a character, a person, and it's a woman that when she's really pretty, she's really stupid. When she's really smart, she's really ugly. And then there's the middle version, and that's Chameleon. Okay, it's a character. That's the magic of the character. But in any case, Chameleon and Bink have a son called Dor. Dor can talk to objects, and the objects will speak back to Dor. And the plot of this one is actually a lot of fun. So he gets sent back into the past via a magical tapestry and gets embroiled in this really epic kingdom-wide battle between the magicians of the time. There was like the zombie master comes into play. Castle Rugna, of course, is the title of the book, but this is like, it makes a major play. The tapestry is in this castle. And the oddness is, like, I think Dor is 8 when this book starts, but when he gets transported into the tapestry, he gets transported into the body of an older man, a soldier. And so he immediately becomes a man. And so he's having experiences as a man with this like spider character that joins him, becomes a really good friend because it's like a tiny spider on the tapestry, but when the magic kicks off, the spider gets sent into the tapestry as well, but becomes like a very large spider. And anyways, he becomes like, so I think the dynamic between the large spider and Dor becomes really intriguing and interesting because the spider almost like teaches him how to be a man. There were some really good ideas in here, and it focused more on that stuff than it did derail me on the misogynistic language. Now, it did happen because Dor has a crush on the handmaiden, I guess, of his parents. They're at the house. Her name is Millie. She used to be a ghost, but then at the end of the second book, it's a little bit spoilery. Anyways, she ends up not being a ghost. But in any case, he has a crush on Millie, but he's not a man yet, so he doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know what those feelings mean. But he gets sent to the past, though. So I'm injecting myself here because I derailed, and I want to finish my thought. Is that the Millie character, she was a ghost in the prior book. She became an unghost. So, well, alive. She became alive again, okay? And then she ends up helping Bink and Chameleon raise Dor, the child. But Dor, the kid, has a childhood crush on Millie, the not ghost anymore woman. But when he goes back to the past, Millie is alive because it's a couple hundred years in the past in Castle Rogna. And Millie is alive Millie, but Dor is in the body of a man. And then Millie is attracted to the man who's actually Dor inside the man. There's other entanglements with other female characters like the Rock Nymph, but then the Rock Nymph goes to Incel Warrior. And listen, it's very confusing, and it goes back to the same topic I've been harping on. But the point is, he comes back to the present, and Millie is alive after the last book where she was a ghost, but in this book she was alive because it was the past. She was in this book. You find out why she becomes a ghost and how she becomes alive again. Is this making it better or worse? But my point is that while reading this book, I was like, oh my god, watch it be that Millie was actually attracted to the adult Dor man, but then it wasn't, because there's this other twist with the zombie master, stuff like that. It was a really awesome twist at the end, which is why this got a 4 out of 5 star. I'm not going to spoil the end of it. There was a very clever rigmarole in the last quarter of the book, maybe even the last 2 chapters. But I'm derailing within a derailment. I'm going to send you back. There's just, again, language that I feel is odd. Maybe it's just the world of Xanth makes it even more odd because, of course, centaurs are created with human and horse unions. Like, all hybrids in this world are effectively bestiality products. It's just the world. It's just the world. That's what I mean about you have to sign up for the ride, even though you're like, this is on so many levels. It's really straining me to stay. But I loved the story, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 because it kept me just far enough away from the stuff that kept pulling me out of the story that I really enjoyed this. And so this is maybe the only Xanth recommend so far. I really, really enjoyed it. I did absolutely return back to, goddamn, the Xanth world with Piers Anthony's Centaur Isle. Strangely enough, I was probably halfway through the book before I realized that the title itself was a play on words that is effectively the entire setup of the first 1 or 2 chapters, where he's got a spelling bee, which is literally a bee. You get where that's why I'm not going to get into the details of this. The point is, that's the kind of language and how language really impacts what things are on the world of Xanth. But the Centaur Isle, by the time I got halfway through the book, I'm like, is maybe the mystery that it's the center isle? See what I'm saying? Now, center never really came into it, but isle did. Like, there's a map at the beginning of every book, and where the centaur are, the centaur are is Centaur Isle, but there's a centaur on Centaur Isle who's a magician, which is not the centaurs don't use magic, or they don't admit to having magic because it's kind of like they'll get exiled and stuff like that. But on Centaur Isle, there's a centaur who can create an isle of magic where magic will work, and so they have to go back to Mundania. So there's the world outside of Xanth where magic does not exist. It's the real world, if you will. But they got to go back to that world, and they got to bring the centaur along so that they can bring magic with them. And so they bring the Centaur Isle into the Mundania. Anyways, the concepts are very fun, but the prose I felt was very convoluted to try to get some of these ideas across. Arnold the Centaur has to keep all of these people inside the Isle of Magic while they're moving through Mundania, and it's very hard to track what's going on with where these characters are placed in the scene and when they come out and go in, and it's just kind of very hard. So there's Smash right here. He's an ogre son of the ogre in the first 3 books. They befriend an ogre. I think his name is Crunch. And then there's Chet, who's the son of the centaur in the previous books. This is why I do love the idea of this series, because there's like this legacy, and you're following this legacy of characters, and we're only on the 4th book, and there's already like the offspring of the characters from the first 2 books are coming up now. We got Irene, who's the daughter, the princess, the daughter of King Trent, which is the magician in the first book, who becomes the king, of course, in the second book. And then, man, so it's just great. And then, of course, Irene, and there's Dor and Irene. There's like a thing with them. They're 16 and 15. That's going to be important in the next couple things I say. Anyways, and on the little shoulder there, you can barely see him. There's a golem in here who's turned real. So just think of like Pinocchio style scenario here. And so Grundy, there's Grundy on the shoulder of Chet. In any case, this could have been good. It was too convoluted, like I said. And by God, did every chapter have to talk about Irene's legs? Every chapter, multiple times, did I have to hear descriptions of a 15-year-old's legs or other body parts along the way, especially as Dor and her start getting more intimate and close, because they do have they care for each other and are showing affection, and that could have been such a strong character development between both of them. But every character had to talk about Irene's physical form, especially her legs. And so that might have tapped me out like of more Xanth novels, which is unfortunate, because I actually do want to know what child Irene and Dor now give. And so might I be brought back to the world of Xanth just because of my train wreck curiosity? Yes. But I think for now I'm going to tap out.